We have a process.
Give me 30 seconds.
Ryan is on board now, so.
You making a nomination there?
No. Making officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, so you can do it either written or voice ballot. So if you want to do a written ballot to encourage people to nominate themselves, you can do that. If you're all comfortable, think you can, that you don't need to do that. You can also do a single motion for, well, we don't have all the existing officers, so you could do that for everything but secretary. If you wanted to do that, if you don't tell me, then I'm going to tell you. So
Who's our current treasurer? Is it secretary / treasurer?
Is it?
No, Cray, I think, is the treasurer and Kristen was the secretary.
Yes,
correct.
but
Do you
And
guys?
that's not Mountain Park Services though. That's separate.
that's what you said.
Yeah, this is just Mountain Parks Electric.
Mountain
Becoming
Parks,
treasurer.
yes.
Yes.
Are there other people who want to step up? We've always asked that.
Oh, thank you.
So
For president.
Well, I was going to say for treasurer, vice president, or president, because we have those.
yeah, if nobody's interested
Nobody's interested.
in running for one of those, we could have a motion, to elect the current slate of president, vice president, and treasurer to another term.
I would make that motion.
Because I'd second that.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Okay.
on favor, I guess.
Okay, yeah, so you want me to do it since you're.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion to re-elect Liz as president, Justin as vice president, Cray as treasurer to another term.
Correct.
Any debate? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay,
Thank you, George.
Is there any reason why
Yeah,
this doesn't have secretary treasurer as one office?
Well, we could, I was going to, no, Cray doesn't want to be secretary.
My note-taking skills.
You don't have to take the notes.
Typical.
Kristen took the notes, but you do not have to take, it's not a,
it's been delegated to the attorney.
right.
If the secretary wants to take notes, they can.
Ours-
It creates one more
No, you,
document for me to review while doing
Also,
the minutes.
very commonly delegated to a staff member, like the executive assistant. So that's a very common way of handling it too. So the secretary of the board does not have to take it,
there are.
I don't know shorthand.
Secretary.
but you have to have a secretary to sign.
The main thing of the secretary is you have to sign a lot more things.
Right, you do have to sign more things.
I would be willing to be secretary as long as I don't have to take minutes or record things or.
Okay,
Doing a secretarial.
and if we do DocuSign, I'll probably be really happy to be
Yeah.
secretary. Okay. I would nominate Cray to be secretary.
Secretary treasurer.
Well, yeah, this is adding secretary to the treasurer.
He's already treasurer, yeah. So this is just separate offices, but the same person's doing it, which is okay. So this is separately for secretary. You can handle this one, Liz, now.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Gonna abstain.
All right.
Okay.
Let's do that.
And they
So now we need to vote on, have you guys had a chance to look at, we've been talking about this since Virginia came on board, which is to try to make our board meetings more effective, do some of the grunt work behind the scenes, and use a committee structure. And
Yeah, so I wrote up a description of the committee structure that I would recommend that the board consider. I hope you've all had a chance to read it. Essentially, it's a standing committee. So this is different than like creating a subcommittee that goes out and deals with an issue like we did with the, recent donation request. These would be standing committees. There would be an executive committee, which would be made up of the executive team of the board, so the president, vice president, and secretary treasurer. There'd be a finance committee, which would be made up of 2 other board members, and then a member relations committee, which would be made up of 2 other board members. So each of you would serve on a committee. Each committee would have a chair, and then those committees would work with a staff person. So there'd be a staff representative for each of those committees. I would be executive. Emily would be finance, and then most likely Aaron for member relations. And those committees would handle various issues. So it's not only dividing the policies out, the policies would be divided by topic appropriately to those committees for review and revision that then come back to the full board for vote, but then also issues. So like, for example, the ad hoc committee that you guys formed for that donation request, that typically could go to, in this structure, it would go to the member relations committee, right? So you don't have to create ad hoc committees, you would assign them to the appropriate standing committee. And I've given kind of a description of the typical issues that those committees would handle. But the board, of course, could assign any particular issue to any committee as you guys see fit. The committees meet as regularly as you need them to. Certainly, they'd have to meet regularly enough to go through the policies so that we could have the policies on a regular review cycle. But other than that, I wouldn't think it would be monthly. I think it'd be, maybe 3 times a year, depending on the work that needs to be done by that individual committee. The committee would have its meeting, come up with recommendations that then you bring back to the full board for a vote. It tends to make the meetings run more efficiently because you've already kind of hashed out the details of certain issues within that committee meeting. And it also, I think it brings a greater depth of understanding for individual board members in an area of interest to you, right? So if you're particularly interested in finance, the finance committee would be a great place for you to get a more deep dive on, cost of service study, rate design, budgeting, things like that. So I think it helps have some more subject matter experts get more deeply involved in various aspects of the company.
And one of the things I did talk to Virginia about was since we only have 7 board members and we're doing 2 and 2, if, for example, there's someone who really wants to go to the finance committee meetings, who's on the executive committee or in the member relations and wants to, you can co-attend, you may not get your per diem for that meeting. So we'll budget it like we're going to have 3 or 4 committee meetings of each one of these 4 times. Each committee will meet 4 times a year. But certainly, I don't want to exclude, particularly the budget and the rate design stuff. If there are people who want to attend that.
You get paid, of course, if you're on the committee, you get paid to attend all committee meetings. If you're not on the committee, that's what we're proposing. Maybe that wouldn't necessarily be paid, but you're welcome to attend. That way, we don't run up the budget associated with board meetings.
Do you think everything fits under the umbrella of these 3 committees?
Not perfectly.
Or you don't want 10, but how?
I would say not perfectly,
perfectly,
but because the board is so small, because it's only a 7-member board, I would hate to have an additional committee and have you guys have to sit on multiples. If there's an issue that we feel doesn't fall into one of these, then we could address it as a whole
Or the
board.
executive committee then?
Yeah, or the executive committee gets it, or we address it as a whole board, right? I mean, everything doesn't have to go to a committee. But in general, I would think in member relations, I'm not thinking that as just being communications. That's also, we interact with our members on everything we do operationally. So if we're talking about staking or line design or anything in that operational side, that also is essentially how we relate to our members. So I'm thinking of a lot of those aspects going into there too.
Have you seen this type of structure in other?
Yes.
And apparently it's worked well because you
like it.
appear to like it.
What I found that it does the most, besides giving you guys kind of in-depth knowledge into certain aspects of the company that you're most interested in, which I think is a benefit to you as board members, I think it also really helps with policy review. So when you don't have, the way that we're reviewing policies right now, in my mind, is not very effective. I think we're giving everything a cursory look. We're not really diving deep into whether or not those are effective. Whereas if you have a finance committee with Emily as your staff rep, looking into specifically the finance policies, you're going to give them a much deeper evaluation. You're going to get feedback from Emily as to whether or not it's working. Then she'll run them by Levi to make sure there's not anything legally that needs to change. I just think you end up with better policies, better policy review process, and better revisions and changes to policies. And that's important because policies are a major function of the board.
And a better understanding of
Yeah.
what the policies are, and what they mean, what their purpose is.
So would you, I mean, an example of this would be when Emily went through and cleaned up B3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you expecting the committee to be been there for the entire cleanup
No.
process, or?
When you guys had a committee meeting, she would have brought these recommended changes to you. You would have talked about them. She would have explained them to you.
Why?
Why and how, and and you guys would have had the chance to go through it too and say, I think we should change this section, so that when you meet as a committee, you will have already looked at that policy, thought about it, and then gone over her changes, discussed them together. And then when you come back to the board, potentially, rather than Emily talking about the policy changes, it would be the committee chair talking about the policy changes and why they're necessary. But no, you wouldn't be actually sitting there, working through that necessarily together, but potentially during that committee meeting, you would make some changes on the fly. Some of those things that we do in here, a lot of times with policy changes, where you're like, oh, we should change this word or that word, that would have been done in the committee, rather than it coming here and then having to say, oh, let's amend these changes, and then vote on it. It tends to be more.
And for Ryan and Ty, we have, Tiffany counted, 40 policies.
Tons of policies.
And we're supposed to review them every 2 years. All of them need to have been reviewed. And what tends to happen is we just throw them out. They go in the board packet, sort of, yeah, did you look at them? Yeah. And that's the extent of it. And then when we really dig into an issue, we're like, oh, maybe this policy doesn't really reflect today's up.
Yes.
So. And with the new person, we'll have a much better repository and record-keeping system of these policies so that they remain current.
I like the idea. I'd be willing to serve on the executive one, the MPE,
Okay, well,
help out.
first let's vote on whether or not we like the committee structure, and then we can fill those spots.
I think it's worth trying for a while. If it's not working in 2 years, I don't think you probably have to give it a couple, 3 years to see if it is working.
Okay,
But if it's not, we don't have to do anything.
Pray what you're feeling.
I'm going to be the bad guy here, because I agree completely with Virginia on the efficiencies and having committees. To me, the danger is that we kind of repeat the discussion at the board meeting that we had at the committee level. And to me, the only reason we should have committees is to streamline the board meeting. And I'm not trying to get out of work here, but I think if, it's 3:20, we've got a long ways to go in our agenda. We've got an awful lot of business coming up with new contracts with new suppliers and so forth. And, maybe I'm not opposed to committees because we had them at the Land Trust and they worked really well. So I'm in favor. But I'm wondering if we introduce committees now, if we're going to kind of add to our workload and be more inefficient with our time, rather than if we might wait, till the dust settles on some of the work we're doing now. Or we form committees and we go to every other month board meetings. And that frees up the in-between month for committee work. I'm just kind of throwing things out there, but I can see all the advantages to having committees, and I agree with it. I'm just not sure if the timing is right, given our workload.
Yeah, and some of these larger issues, like power supply, for instance, we could choose not to put that in committee. That could always come to the full board. Some of the smaller issues that would be typically divided up between the committees, that does require a significant amount of trust between board members to say, no, I trust that if that committee's making this recommendation, they have done their work, they have worked through it with staff, and we're not going to rehash it here in the board meeting. So if you guys don't feel like you can have that type of rapport and that type of trust within the board, I think you're right. Some of it will be regurgitated at the board meeting. But if you start to, build confidence in each other and in the work of that committee, then shouldn't be rehashing it during the board meeting.
Do you think it'll slow staff down? I mean, that was my initial worry is like, now Emily's gonna have to sit there with us and go whoever's.
I
mean,
think that
opposed
I think there's a good reason for staff to be more involved and engaged in some of these things. And for you guys to be working side by side with them on some of these policy issues and stuff. I think it's a benefit. It will take time, but she's gonna be going through those policies anyway and go on and get the input from you guys during that. So that's I think it's a better process.
You've had completely different meetings already now.
Yes.
That's fine. I do agree with that. I do agree with your assessment, Virginia, is you do have to have trust in any member. You cover the same, you're farming the same ground twice, and it doesn't work. But, that's the whole point of the committee deal, is you gotta trust them or don't do it.
And are we willing to give that a try?
Does that work okay for somebody? I mean, Ty obviously lives the farthest away, so is this something that can be Zoom or, I mean, Mark and Ty obviously are farthest away from the office.
I'd recommend Zoom for a lot of them, or for Teams or whatever. And then the committee meetings don't always have to be at headquarters either. When I've seen the structure work, we did some of those committee meetings based on where the chair was. So like, if the chair lives in Walden, maybe the committee meetings are in Walden. And that's not necessarily a problem, or Kremlin.
Where do you see the frequency of these meetings in the other boards that you've been dealt with? A couple times a year, 5 times a year?
It really depends on the issues at hand. I would say some of them met typically, I would say 4 to 5 times a year. Yeah, but those were particularly active committees who I think wanted to meet more. And I think it's really up to you guys as to how much you put in it. We've got a lot of policies to go through, but if I think probably 4 a year would be my guess as to this board. Yeah.
This would be an example of when we met the other day with talked about the power presentation ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would sort of be more of
A formal
formalization
version of that.
of
Yes.
that, yes.
As I scanned through it, the only one I'm probably, I think that the finance and labor relations make it kind of sense to me. It seems like most of the categories under executive are pretty weighty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want those to bypass good full board discussion.
Absolutely. And that's where I was saying, like maybe on power supply, things like that, we would absolutely pull those out and have those as the full board, not in
Yeah,
executive.
it's just not that one in isolation. It's
Yeah.
basically every one of those is maybe HR. But the rest of them seem pretty important. Hence the executive. So I get it, but that would be my only concern in how this might operate.
And probably just having leeway to know when there's an appropriate time for the committee to meet versus.
Well, and what the report, as the committee digs through these things, what they communicate to the greater board, yeah.
And these are just examples of matters, right? I mean, these are things that I put in there as examples. That does not mean that's what you guys have to put in these committees. You can choose not to. You can choose the committees to start by just working through policies. These are just examples, so you guys remember that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was trying to read it quickly. Policies, issues, programs, services. Seemed like there was a whole host of things.
Yeah.
So if the executive committee is the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and that's the whole committee.
Yes.
And then remaining board members, non-officers, it kind of forces them to staff
The other two committees.
finance and
Yes,
member relations.
that's correct.
The treasurers would probably be involved somewhere. I think third one.
Or 2 or 3 hats. 4 hats.
Well, I'll throw it out there. Do we want to give this a go?
We can always stop.
Right. That's the good news.
I'll speak for, geez, we've never done it this way.
Also, I mean, it might alleviate a little bit of time off of the place. I mean, I look at your sheet, you have a 90 hours, it's a lot of time. And hopefully, the rest of the board can out with a few of those things. I mean, that's how I looked at it when I initially saw this, so.
Yeah.
And I realize there's some matters that are, you know, need to be the main contact for, but
But
there's other
yeah.
things where it might be a good way to spread that out.
Yeah, well, and it also spreads out just the board getting to
Be engaged.
be engaged with the staff, be engaged with each other. I mean, it's hard to be really engaged once a month with a big group with, you know, a really long list. If you're engaged with 3 people on a really specific task, I think you have a different experience. Any motion on this?
Yeah, Mark.
I'd make a motion, we give it a go for, if it's not working, and I think you probably got to give it a couple of years to see if it's going to work. If it's not working,
Yep.
just don't use the committees. You haven't got to dissolve it. There's no real big, just don't use them. You'll have the diversity of the board. I worry about that a little bit, the diversity of the board, but the committee takes it to the board. You end up, because it never ceases to amaze me in these meetings. Somebody comes up, you go, hell, that's not what I was thinking at all. And you know, it's a reasonable thing sometimes. Not very often, sometimes. So
Second?
as long as we don't lose that, everything goes in front of the board. You know?
Yep, oh, yeah.
Just work the details out in committee, and
Yeah, there is this.
I'd make a motion, we go.
Okay, Ty seconded. All in favor? Up.
Are we
Discussion?
discussing or?
Yeah, we can discuss some more.
I'd be prone to support this if we pull legal and supply out of executive.
I agree in some ways. I also look at the committees as, there have been times, for example, legal contracts, or there are some issues that come up between board meetings that currently, as president, I kind of have 2 options. I can try to call you all, get your take, or I can look at the policies, talk to Levi and ask him if I have the authority to do something. I would feel much better having an executive committee to handle that issue and provide some guidance as far as, no, this is something that we feel the whole board we should have an emergency meeting on, or this is something that we think the executive committee, I mean, because there are gray areas and there's, so that's why I would leave the legal matters and the power supply matters in there. But
It doesn't mean that all legal matters and all power supply matters are going to go to that committee. I mean, there's no chance over the next couple of months while we're working through power supply that we're going to put those discussions in that committee instead of in this board table. It's just an example of if there was something that was appropriate for a committee within those subject areas, that's where they'd go. And this is, like I said, just an example of what I threw together. It is not, these are not committee charters or anything like that. I mean,
It's just advisory review.
it's just advisory.
It's not voting.
That's correct. No
Yeah.
voting authority. Everything still has to come back to the board.
As you'll see tonight at 8 o'clock, Levi goes through his month's invoice and answers questions at you know, these are the lawsuits we're in, these are the.
At 8 o'clock.
At 8 o'clock, yeah, I caught
Just got it, okay.
So Levi does, and I mean, most of those, it's the first time I've ever seen it is when you up on the
Yep.
call to order. And I see that, you know, he called Virginia or Virginia called him, and then that's when those are brought to our attention, which is obviously confidential matters, so it's in the executive, so. But I agree with you, I think the power supply matters, anything that is at the highest level that the board is there.
And right now, power supply seems really big because we're working on a new contract. Going forward, after that's done and we're just in a normal power supply agreement, power supply can be little issues, right? It could be, you know, our power supplier wanting to set up a meeting with us. So we talk about an executive committee when the best time for a meeting would be. You know, right now, power supply is huge. It won't always be that level of, you know, weightiness that we're dealing with on power supply matters. It could be really small things.
Although I think we heard from Dick Carson,
Yeah.
there's a lot of interaction
Yeah.
that you haven't had in the past
Yeah.
related to it. So,
Well, he also said he now spends like one day a month talking to, you know, his power supplier compared to what it was, you know, previously. So I think it's, yeah, I mean, just from my experience, it does get to be less once that contract is in place. Like right now it is all consuming. It will not be all consuming. It won't be after we're in a new agreement.
All in favor? Any opposed? As written, motion.
As presented is what the motion was, yep.
It's some, I mean, are we doing, but again.
This is just
Yeah,
examples, yeah.
this is just a general template. I mean, we know that these committees are going to review policies. Now, personally, we may not jump into reviewing the policies for another month or two, because there's a lot between the fiber, the power supply, the budget. There's a lot going on. As other matters come up that fit within these, we can assign work.
Who's going to,
Real quick, so did you ask for nays?
I did, there
didn't.
was one nay.
Okay.
Oh, did I ask for?
We
nays?
didn't ask.
I don't think you actually asked for
Okay,
nays.
any opposed?
Okay.
You have to tell if you want it to be.
Yeah, would you like it recorded?
And you guys were
Okay. This is in the weeds, but before I forget, when you do start doing policies, I could ask a favor. If all three committees could not do several policies in the same month, because each of you will only have those few, but I'm gonna have to review all of them.
Right.
So it'll make it much easier lift for me if they get spread out.
Well, for staff too.
Yeah, right.
We'll try to split them out.
Yeah.
who's going to dictate what each committee's doing there as far as?
What I have seen in
tasks,
the
their goals.
past is the chairperson plus the staff people decide what's going to be on the agenda, decide what they need to tackle,
Just
decide
the
whether or not they
policy
need
one,
it.
yeah.
Yes. Well, once we have a good records program, we will have a schedule for policy review. Policy review should be on a schedule, to Levi's point, that makes it to where it's spread out throughout the year. So we aren't looking at, because if three committees each have 4 policies, you got to vote on that many too at a board meeting. So you really want it to be spread out throughout the year. That would help with the policy piece. And then, the chairperson of the committee and then the staff member come up with what needs to be on the agenda or whether or not there even has to be a meeting.
There are a number of policies that we've looked at that don't.
Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's easy. You could just check it off and say it's been reviewed.
Okay. Are we gonna fill
That's
what's the
That's
next
the
one?
bottom of all the representatives.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Election of Board of Reps.
So are you gonna fill the committees?
We're
this month? We can do that next
do
month.
it at the end. It's at the end of.
Oh.
So it goes twice
Okay.
and RECAC. Okay. Is there anyone willing to serve as a tri-state director? Anyone want to throw their hat into that? Seeing none. NRECA, at times we have had a delegate. That involves travel to regional meetings, if voting, getting up to speed on what NRECA does. Some people find it a great time to meet with other peers and learn from them. Others find it a waste of co-op money. But I think it's usually what we've done since the last 5 years is if you go to one of those meetings, you are expected to come back and report on it and share what you've learned with your fellow directors.
And if this is this would be a voting delegate, not a board.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's December 8th through the 12th, I saw in Nashville, if anyone's interested.
That might be a school too. Those are the classes.
Yeah, I think there's classes there.
So if if there's someone who wants to do it, great. If not, we can skip that one.
Just
Classes.
There's classes which you don't have to be the delegate for if you don't want to, but there's a week-long, it's actually 5 days, I think. You can go to Nashville, you can take all your classes at once and be done with that requirement. Or you can do it the way Cray did it, which was online, or you can do it Justin and I often went down to Denver because CREA had free classes, but it takes longer to complete your requirement that way, but you meet a lot of co-op directors that way.
in 3 years, there's 5 classes. We found value in going down to Denver. And they're during the Energy Innovation Summit and then the annual series. So there's guest speakers that evening.
I think it's a good way to do it because it's spread over time. You go on. It was like 4 years before I got them all, but you by the fourth one, you kind of knew what you were doing and you gleaned more from the class. I think that's a great way.
Okay.
Online, they're offered once per year.
And that's
Okay.
right through Energy.
Anyone want to be the NRECA delegate? Okay. Moving on to CREA and Western United.
I'll continue as CREA unless someone else would love and dying to do it.
And Mark,
I would continue being Western United.
so I'd entertain a motion to keep Craig.
Unless somebody else.
Does anyone want to take on more meetings?
I'm open to the CREA option, but I
Would you like to
I
be
just
our
have no idea.
alternate?
I hate to even bring it up on my first day. So that's,
Yeah.
I'm like, so I'm, if you're looking to get rid of it, Craig, I'm open to taking it, but I just, I certainly don't know enough to. I've only done it since January, so I feel like I should at least stick it out for a little.
Can you be the alternate though?
I'm happy to be an alternate, yeah.
Do you need?
Just partial disclosure.
And either way, eventually CREA does have a new member orientation that I know Craig will know when it is, but they'll invite you down for a day to do that. And Craig's going to be gone at one of the meetings anyways.
You want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that Craig and
Let's do them separately.
as the
Yeah.
Craig the primary and Brian as the alternate for CRE.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No.
I'll make a motion that Mark be the Western United delegate.
My first second.
Oh, I'm sorry, second? Is there a second? You're the second? All in favor? I'm taking notes here. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. CFC delegate. Clean Power Committee delegate. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time.
These are-
I don't know if you want to serve as an alternate. Or delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean Power Committee for a long time. I've been board delegate on the Clean The Clean Power Committee is the committee that takes the voluntary contributions from Mount Parks members and decides sort of how the rebates get spent or whether they do different projects with that money. Is there anyone who'd like to be the board delegate to that committee?
How often?
Quarterly, I think. Quarterly, I think.
This is a committee of community members. Is that-
Right, yeah, it's a committee of, well, of Mount Parks members. Yeah. Okay, I'll do it again. Because it's not that much.
Motion, please.
I don't think, it's not an official.
Because you already, so you're just continuing.
Yeah. Okay. Committee chairs. Executive committee. Is that? Doing okay? Or is that me?
That's you.
That's default,
As
okay.
presented, that was you, yeah.
Okay, so, and then finance.
I'd be happy to participate in that one, whether chair or not is.
Is
Yeah,
there-
Mike over there too.
I know, but, we should,
just gets
he
assigned.
maybe should have gotten a.
He left,
I
put
don't-
him on it. Tim
You want to go fishing?
To let these two choose
Yeah,
what they
oh,
want to do.
totally.
He's gonna watch this recording.
Ty, you guys better decide.
Yeah.
Figure out, like,
Ty-
better
Yeah,
I'm just going to be a member. I'm not going to be a chair. So
okay.
on the finance one, or would you rather do the member relationship?
I'll do either one, but I don't have time for
Yeah, Sharon.
a lot of this. I got time for
Membership finance, or membership relations, I don't want finance.
Would you like to be the chair of the member?
If nobody else,
Okay.
if nobody else will do it, I'll do it.
And which one, did you say you wanted to be on finance or on, I'm looking at Ty, didn't say.
finance is fine.
It's your choice.
Finance is
Okay. So we have Ryan as the chair of the finance, Ty as the other member. Member relations, we have Mark and Mike. Mark's the chair.
Mark and who?
Mark and Mike Schubacken.
And Mark's the chair, yeah. You should probably do a motion.
Okay. Would someone like to move that?
I move.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
So one motion for Ryan,
can move.
okay.
chair of the finance committee, and Ty to be the other member of that committee. Mark to be the chair of the member relations, and Mike to be the other
So
committee.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Levi, did you get the second on that?
Yes, Mark.
Departmental reports. We aren't going to get you guys home. Ready?
Sure.
All right.
Don't have a whole lot to add to this report. Yeah, a couple things. I had notified the board on the scheduled outage for construction last week. Our employees really did an awesome job, not just the linemen, but staff inside, just communicating to the public. We got a ton of phone calls and questions what we were doing over there, and it really went good. And the guys got it done in a shorter amount of time than expected. They did it safely, and it was a really good job. Couldn't have asked for more from everybody on that. Engineering has really been doing a good job with some difficult conversations with some customers lately, just on some of the jobs that fell into that 2020, 2022 range, bigger jobs that we had overages on. We really had to have some tough conversations with members lately, just explaining what happened and procedures, what we're doing now to mitigate it. But really done a good job. They've done a great job on retaining emails and documenting things. why there was overages on some of these jobs, but, that's been a kind of a tough, task over the last several months that engineering's been dealing with. And, I guess, just kind of finally, the fiber construction, it really is getting close to completion. It's actually, I would say that construction is complete. There's a bunch of what you would call, little things that line up. And there, over the next few months and maybe even year, there'll be a bunch of devices that Joe's gonna get in and equipment that we're gonna continue to connect with it. But, overall, it really is in place. It's constructed. And, that's a very, awesome thing because it's been, not an easy task and, we wrangled it in and it is in the air and, a lot of it is usable and we're continuing to get more of it. They call it lighting fiber. And we're continuing to get more of it lit as we speak. So, and I guess finally, the last thing I have is just the Trail Creek project. Kind of a neat thing. They brought up a monster trencher up there that trenches 5,000 feet a day. So I fully expect that project to get done with what they got up there now. So that'd be a really neat thing to get that project wrapped up this fall.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
Did you ask for the flat spin or dinner roll on your your little ski guy?
Only Elizabeth
I
knows.
saw that this morning, yes.
Okay.
I did
Now,
notice it this
I
We
wanted,
had a brief conversation about that. I didn't know it was gonna go in there.
I wanted you to know I pay attention to these things. I just want to thank the guys. They've been out a lot.
Yeah.
And they've been doing a really good job.
I agree. Yeah, we did have a few outages roll through in July. Some crazy thunderstorms made I know we had a few outages, but considering the strength of some of the storms, I think it's a testament to our maintenance and our system that it was limited to what it was. And when we did have some outages, the guys did a really good job getting out there and getting the lights back on safely. But yeah, some pretty serious storms rolled through in July.
Any other questions?
Liz mentioned it, but I noticed also that ability on that heading for the board report. I don't know if that was Aaron or your skiing ability, but everybody looked like they were on their feet. Managers. So I have a coupon for one complimentary full day ski lesson from the Winter Park Ski Patrol. You will find the sport more fun and you will ski more safely after learning some basics. So Adam, enjoy that ski lesson. And those expired about 5 years ago. So it's boys.
Okay,
Great call.
so as you see, you have the report in front of you. We continue to underperform the budget. Year to date for June, we are underperforming by 48%. Our margins are short by about 1.3 million. This is largely due to that accounting change. We talk about it every month with aligning revenues in the same fund as cost of power. In addition, Northern Colorado water is not pumping this year. That generates a fairly significant amount of revenue. And let's see. Our cost of electric service is actually 657,000 under budget. Again, probably due to pumping. In aggregate, the departmental budgets are coming in just slightly over budget at 77,000 over. And it's largely related to increased expenses related to recruitment and employee benefits. Our liquidity position remains within an acceptable range. We are still seeing, which is totally normal for this time of year, a decrease in cash summer months with all of the projects we have going on. That's totally normal. And I'm not concerned about the cash position. I do want to let you all know that we have, as of this board meeting, when I wrote this, we had not received it. We have received 1.4 million from FEMA. So we still have, I think, an additional 600,000 in requests we're going to do in the next 4 months. So that helps our cash position for sure. The ratios are still tracking similarly to how they have been. Debt service is continuing to track downward. I believe that will probably start to shift a bit. Again, even if we don't meet our debt service this year for some reason, which I'm not concerned about at this point, it is a high 2 of the last 3 years. So not to be concerned that we wouldn't meet our debt covenant tonight. That's about all I have on the finance report. Business as usual in the other departments. We still have not solved the income payment. I don't know what the issue is. The vendor we're using is sort of playing middleman, and something is not working. They're saying it should be when we go to actually test it, it does not work. Paying the bill at Dollar General or some lines. Fortunately, we haven't made any progress there.
DNPs or the deceased natural persons capital credits,
Say again?
DNPs. Under the office services, it says DNPs. I was like, are those deceased natural persons capital credits? I mean, I don't know what it is.
Disconnect for non-pay.
Oh, disconnect. Well, I know we don't have credits for
Where did
that.
she abbreviate it?
Oh, there it is. It's under
Oh, okay.
office services, second bullet point. Yeah, disconnect for non-pay.
Okay.
Does the FEMA reimbursement go just deposit right into cash? Or is it going into an account where it's already got a slot open for it?
No, it goes directly into cash.
Because we've already spent some cash on
Yes.
all
Spend
those.
cash
Yeah.
to do that, yeah.
Okay.
We've already booked the receivable for it, or we should
Okay.
have booked the receivable for it, so that project where we're expecting that payment, it should already be listed as lead to construction.
Thanks.
We don't receive many margins from the northern Colorado water anyway, so it's not really affecting that one.
But it would, I mean, it would still show up in our revenues, and it would still show up in our cost of power, just not in our, wouldn't in our margins.
Is Northern not pumping because of the wet year or because they're doing construction on the eastern slope?
What year in construction?
Suppose they're making that project.
Yeah.
We're not buying power and not selling power. Why would that make any difference?
It
But
still comes in as revenue. And then, yeah, so
Yeah,
it's.
so if you look at that revenue top amount, that decreases. If you look at the expenses, that decreases the margin.
It's not just a wash.
All right. Any more questions for Emily? Did you get through?
Yeah, it was, I tried to keep it short and sweet, because I
Okay.
had so much other stuff.
All right. Joe, how are you gonna fix that tower?
So that is the one thing I draw your attention to this month. We are still struggling to get a commitment from the repair company on when they can do it.
What tower?
It's Santoy. So this is a pretty important site for us. It houses both two-way radios, a metering system, as well as a relay for SCADA and some of the substations south of there called. The tower has a pretty significant leaning to it, at least the top 25 feet or so do. They claim they're gonna get it done this year, and I call them pretty much every day. The problem is locating a 40-foot crane that will make the trip. I guess there's some projects that are going on down around Colorado Springs that have most of the ones that they have access to tied up. So I'm hopeful that we'll get this fixed this year, but I'm at the mercy at this point in time. I really don't want to go through another winter with it like this. It may not survive. That's the big piece. Other than that, metering is scrambling with the last few chilly mornings to get some of the system maintenance done before it gets more difficult. There's not really any crisis there. It's mostly just how our whole work around here with a little bit of communication and site work, but confident they'll get it done. But I think it was a little bit of an awakening when we went to work at 35 degrees on August 9th or whatever it was. That winter's on its way. So with that, I have any questions yet.
Any questions for Joe?
Is Sam Toy your ball?
No, it's used.
Yeah.
It's
Probably used.
That's Mountain Park's owned.
We don't own it. We lease
Oh.
it. We are responsible for maintenance.
Gotcha.
They don't use it for anything.
Angie?
Okay, just a couple little updates, staffing our grants coordinator, Helen Sundler, she did start today. Meter tech, I know Joe and Nathan Clark have interviewed a couple good candidates for that position. Safety director, we're getting some good applications in, so we should be starting the interview process here pretty quick. Staff engineer, we're not seeing anything yet. We're gonna make a couple changes to the requirements on that and hopefully get some in. And then executive assistant, Virginia and I interviewed 2 candidates for that. We have a final first round of interviews set for next Thursday. And I think either way, we've got some good candidates for that one, so we're excited about that. August safety meeting is coming up. I'm working with Adam and Brian. We're gonna do a safety rodeo outside. It'll involve some, like pre-trip inspections, that kind of thing, but just put it in a little bit lighter format and maybe have a little bit of fun with it and incorporate that into the safety aspect of things. So, and then this winter we'll do an inside safety one. But the way we've got it set up, we'll have all of the inside employees and the outside employees participating. So nobody will be left out. So. And then don't forget September is when we'll have the day in the life of the lineman, the safety demo, and our guest speakers will be coming in that day. We'll have, I think his name is Bill. He was a lineman. He had a contact, and then Rebecca was his nurse in the burn unit. They're the 2 that will be coming in and speaking in September.
And the board's invited to that all-employee meeting.
What's the date on that one?
The 28th, September 28th. Yes, and our all-employee meetings start at noon. We do lunch, and then we'll go into the meeting, so you guys are all encouraged to attend.
His last name's in there.
September 28th at noon. It depends. They've been lasting about 3 hours, but it could go longer depending on the presentation. And since we do have a lot packed into this one, it might be, 4 hours or so.
And we'll probably with that one, we'll do like we did this last month. We'll have everybody go through the food line and then start. What we usually do is wait for everybody to kind of be done eating. This time we'll probably go through the food line and then we'll get started. Speed things up just a little bit.
But for those of you who are new, we just started all employee meetings a few months ago when I got here, and my intent is to invite board members to 2 each year. I just think it's a good opportunity for you guys to see, meet all the employees and for them to meet you and for you guys to hear a little bit about what we've got going on. So this will be really technically the only one this year. I'm not going to do another one before at the end of the year for you guys, but hopefully you can come. If not, we understand.
Any other HR questions? Aaron?
The first item, the community event schedule for the fall. We've attached it with this. You can take a look. We have the coffee with your co-op events. We have the fifth quarter events. September 6th, we have a member appreciation event. It'll be held here. So of course, you're all invited. Of course, your coffee with the co-op event, we would love for you to be there, but you're also invited to all the other ones as well. And to any event that's on the schedule, so. A part of this August employee meeting will be the logo launch internally, where we'll share with employees the new logo, the new look. And then we're planning on, for the September 6th event, to share it with the public. And of course, we spoke yesterday, we're going to be cognizant not to be too flashy about it, because we did pass a rate increase. So, but a reminder that we have the logo is not for free. There was no charge to us for that. And we're going to implement it over time. It's not going to be one big expense where we're just going to go rebrand everything at once. So it'll be a phased in approach. And a part of it will be a new look for the website, which is also a free service that's offered by
Touchdown Energy.
Touchdown Energy. We've spoken with them. They're going to probably be able to do that by the September 6th event. And so we'll have a new look, a new modern feel to the website. And of course, a part of that would be the reintroduction of PDFs and images and maps on the website. So if there aren't any board members that object to us going back to that, then we'll go ahead and move forward. Because through Touchstone, they offer a high level of security. I know that was a concern at one point where there were bad agents looking to sue co-ops and other industries for accessibility concerns on public websites. And so letters were sent, and it raised some red flags and some concerns. But since then, of course, security issues have been heightened, and it's not as much of an issue anymore. Everybody has PDFs and images. So.
Yeah, for those, I think Erin did a great job explaining it. There's some of us who were on the board back in the day when we took everything off that we were concerned that might not meet ADA requirements. I may not be saying that precisely, but we took a lot of things off our website. I think with the new Touchstone technology, those concerns have mostly been allayed. So does anyone object that we go back, we make the website more robust,
User-friendly.
user-friendly, easier for our members? Okay. We're good.
And then the only other thing on the report that we would like maybe some feedback on are the board reports. Just wondering from y'all's perspective, is it the content that you would like to see from each of the departments? Is it too much, not enough? Is there any feedback that you'd like to provide?
On these departmental reports specifically.
Actually, I think they're about right. I mean, it's concise and to the point. I'm fine with it.
Anything else?
I'll just say, again, when I was trying to do a little bit of homework for this, if we could, I don't know, the YouTube channel, seems like some of the videos are posted in random spots. And, we could bookmark the agenda items.
Yes.
Really help people in those two items. And I don't know if there's a particular cadence when we're trying to post video to YouTube. See exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
That could be.
I don't know, I'll look into that.
One thing that I'm just going to throw this out to the board, as we talk about YouTube channels and transparency, is we started doing YouTubing our meetings during COVID. And as far as I understand, we just sort of did it as a board. We didn't really have an in-depth discussion about whether it was why we were doing it, whether we wanted to do it, the purpose of doing it. It's not required by the state. So I'm not saying we should stop it or we should do it better. I'm just letting this board know that from my perspective as president, it's like we started doing this, we continue to do it, and it's one of those things where we've always done it this way. Should we keep doing it? So I'm throwing that out to you. Think about it for the next month or two about, that's a governance issue and communication and
how many people watch it or even click on it?
But it is if you're really,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Were you available on September 12th?
I'm looking at the events.
I forgot that date and I volunteered at the elementary, or at the middle school to teach water.
What are we, doing?
That is the Coffee with Your Co-op
Yes,
here in
I
Granby.
am available. And after, and I, yes, so I'll be going to that one. And if you can't go, just.
I
go. Yeah,
like
that's
3 days
fine.
ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Every year I
Okay.
do, but that's the
And you
day.
can jump in on any other one.
yeah. Go.
Yeah, I'll show up at everyone for sure.
Yeah.
The cardboard cutout.
I will be talking to all of the 6th graders in that. A whole 6th grade class, so
Yeah, yeah.
all day long.
That's a
8
long
at a
day.
time.
All right. Let me go back to the agenda part.
That's the end of the departmental reports, board reports.
Board reports. Association reports. Do you have a meeting, Mark?
Western United, August 24th. Any concerns I asked last time, or if you have, think of anything between now and then that you want brought up to Western United, contact me. Glad to take it.
Craig, do you have a CREA?
CREA had no July meeting, so no report, but I did send out the net metering white paper to everybody. And basically, CREA recommends kind of the status quo, let the local co-ops administer their net metering policies. So there'll probably be more to come from the governor's workshop on that.
Ty, do you have anything, board member comments or we have?
Just two. Go ahead, if somebody else wants to go first. Something that might help you, at previous boards I've been on, their agenda, you have time slots.
Yeah.
And it helps the chair tremendously with time slots. You stick to it and it.
Right.
And maybe the other one, buy a semicircular table.
Yeah, we've talked to.
Staff should not be looking at the back of some folks' heads.
we have-
It makes it hard for interaction.
Yeah,
It does.
we have a building plan and building, so, yes.
Okay.
The time slot, yeah. I don't
know if usually the chair and the board coordinator make the agenda, but it will help you tremendously if you have time.
Gotcha. Anyone else? Board comments? All right. We handled the preschool committee. I don't believe we need a Mountain Park Services meeting. Go back
We
and,
need to elect slate for Mountain Park Services next month.
Yep.
and we'll go into executive session to finish up some conversation about fiber. Any legal matters that people want to ask Levi about? And the new, grant funding discussion and power supply.
What was it? What funding?
Grant opportunities?
Grant opportunities.
So it's power supply, legal, grant funding, that's it?
And fiber.
And fiber.
Are you?
Right.
Is there a motion?
So move to go into
Is there a second?
executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?